Hello everyone, I'm Peter Schaknat, Managing Director of Schaknat Electronic GmbH. Today we're going to optimize a Scania R500. Today we have a beautiful Scania from one of my long-standing customers. As you can see, it's a Scania R500, the old model, so the old engine. Still DC13-155 as the 500 version with 12.7 liters and 2,550 Newton meters of torque. I have to say, these were actually my favorite engines. We've carefully optimized a lot of them because they really work extremely well. The background here is also that the customer deals in mineral oil, so he's a mineral oil dealer. The vehicle is a tanker truck, and that's what he uses it for. The main focus here is on fuel consumption. He simply wanted to do something good for his vehicle again. The car has just under 150,000 kilometers on it, and now he simply wanted to optimize the engine and transmission. This is still the old Euro 6C engine, still with the old turbocharger, the old injectors, yes, with the individual heads. So it's really a very good engine. As for the process, we're going to do an initial measurement now and then optimize it again using the app. They also work great for optimization with the app. We'll first take a look at what it has during the initial measurement, and then we'll decide what to optimize and what to do in the final measurement. For those of you who are a bit technically interested, you know that as trucks get older, you start to gain some experience with the engines. Over the last 1 to 2 years, this has become more noticeable to me. The problem is that cylinder head issues start to develop. The bushing rings become brittle and break. This causes the cylinder liners to drop. The engines suffer from hydraulic lock. In some cases, the engine block itself also wears down. I also wanted to mention in this video that we'll be making a video about this with the Denny models. It's very important with these models to replace the thermostats. There are modified thermostats from Scania that make the water circuit about 9 degrees cooler, because with the Euro models, the heat just builds up at the top of the head. With the Euro 6D variants, that is the DC13-165 engines, it's even worse. So they have even more heat problems at the top of the head. So just so you've heard it, it's really important to replace the thermostats so we can simply get away from these heat issues. In general, these are actually indestructible cars. But in this case, really, at least from what I've heard from my customers over the past few years, I've heard of many damages occurring at 500,000 to 600,000 kilometers because they really did have these heat problems. Just to quickly explain that as well, this is an R-cab. You can recognize the R-cab by the fact that it doesn't have a continuous floor. It's more of a small cab. This is also due to weight reasons. As I said, this vehicle isn't purely for long-distance transport. It's also for construction sites and such. For those kinds of uses, you tend to go for the smaller cabs. The optic rust transmission is completely standard, TMS1. As for the chassis, we have a completely standard 4x2 chassis with stub axles. We've strapped everything down with the roller. Andre already took care of that. Exactly, I've explained that plenty of times in the other videos as well. So I'd say Andre will now start the initial measurement, then we'll meet at the monitor and take a look at the results. Shall we take a look at the measurement together now? Just briefly. I'll quickly explain the axis again. You can see here now, at the bottom, we have the range from 800 to 2200 revolutions. That's the RPM. Then here's the torque axis, which you can see on the right. So here you can see the torque curve, and on the left, you can see the horsepower output. As you know, I have torque at the lower end and power at the higher end. So as I said, the higher the RPM climbs, the more my torque drops, but my peak power increases. That's how you can see the relationship, because people always ask about horsepower. Horsepower is measured at the top, torque is measured at the bottom. Let's take a quick look at this now. You can see here, this is a stock 500 with 500 horsepower and 2,550 as the factory specification. The car now has about 150,000 kilometers and is from the 2018 model year. You can see we measured 488 horsepower in 11th gear, in direct gear, and 2,486 Newton meters. Also, don't forget the conditions. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but it's almost 29 degrees in the workshop. So as you can see, I'm sweating a bit. So this is a perfect result. I have to say, with the newer software versions, and I just wanted to mention this briefly, when I measured these cars 3, 4, or 5 years ago, you can really notice that with the updates from the manufacturers, the power is often adjusted down a bit. This is usually for reasons like emissions regulations or exhaust temperatures or whatever the case may be. With each software update, there are always changes as well. What I've consistently noticed on the test benches is that with the newer updates, it's not much, sometimes 5 horsepower, sometimes 10 horsepower, but the power tends to go down a bit. As you can see here, we actually only have the maximum torque from 1100 to 1300, so it's just a very short peak. And that's exactly what I always say these days. Where it would actually run efficiently, we only have that for 200 revolutions. That's how it's set up. You can see it here. We reach peak power just under 1850, 1900 revolutions. So you can see it up here as well. But you can also see it down here. Starting at 1350, it drops off rapidly. It drops off even faster. And that's always what's important for us, especially when it comes to optimizing fuel consumption. We make the engines more flexible, torque at the front, at the back, higher up, so that the torque curve simply becomes more elastic. We don't actually raise the maximum torque that much because that's what puts stress on the engines. But then at the lower and upper ends, it's simply about making sure that no matter what RPM range you're in, the torque is available. That makes shifting easier, and the transmissions have a much easier time as well. If the driver happens to shift incorrectly, the engine doesn't stall, but instead, for example, down here, still has torque available. And at higher RPMs, it holds up better. All right, then I'll quickly talk to the customer about what we're going to do. Regarding the power and torque, I can set that individually in the app, and then I'd say we'll see each other in a moment when we start flashing. We're flashing the battery now with our app. As I said, this is Michael, the customer himself. I spoke with Michael, and we agreed that since you're a power protection clamp, the transmissions shift more smoothly and gently, so the drivers have better driving comfort. That's why I say, on average, in the Eco variant, I would always set it to 580 horsepower and just under 2000 to 2150 Newton meters. That works best for consumption, so now we're going to set up the Eco variant. I'll show Michael this quickly. You can see it here again. Here is the OBD adapter. You just take the Schaknat adapter and plug it in down here. Then you can hear it too. Now it's blinking steadily. By now we actually have a brand new adapter that connects automatically. Now you just go ahead and select Scania. Now it's already connected automatically. Then we go to the engine control unit. Then we simply go here, and now we do the Eco variant. Here the download is now successfully completed. Always confirm and turn off all other consumers. Then we click on Start here. Now it's writing through. With the engine control units, it takes about a minute and a half. The transmission goes a bit faster. I'll show that again briefly in a moment. Now you see now the green check mark appears. It has also been flashed there. Now we go into the transmission here. With the old scanner, this works really well. Here we also select Transmission Eco. Now you'll hear it click in a moment. Did you hear it? The transmission adjustment is also for Eco. I'm trying to keep the engine speed low. Lower RPM means less fuel consumption. That's why we try to keep it in the lower RPM range so that the transmission shifts up early and also shifts smoothly. Everything related to synchronization is included in the program. But you'll see that for yourself as the process unfolds. What's also really cool, Michael, is up here with the DTCs. That's actually something customers have come to appreciate these days. You can simply read and clear the error memory while on the go. For all control units and with the same quality where nothing else can read them out. So for example, if you ever had an ABS error or some kind of sensor issue, an error not just with the engine or transmission, at least here you can do something about it. And you can say, okay, is it something serious? Do I need to go to the workshop? Or is it maybe really just a sporadic error? Or you can also check on the spot if maybe some sensor cable. See here, you can read out all the control units. That goes really quickly too. Now we have all the CAN bus errors recorded in there. We'll clear them now. Perfect. Well, that's basically it already. Then I would say let's do the output measurements and take a look at the values together. We'll do the output measurements together now. You can see the rear axle has a relatively long ratio. Now we'll measure in 11th gear. That's the direct gear. Depending on the transmission we have, whether it's an overdrive or... Depending on the transmission variant, you always have to check which is the direct gear. Sometimes the direct gear is the 10th, sometimes it's the 12th. Normally the direct gear is the 3rd, but we can easily find that out as well. I always measure the 10th, 11th and 12th gears. That way I can see where I have the most torque, and logically that's also the direct gear. We kept the VMAX so that we can rev it out completely. That's very important for these because at the top end with peak power and power loss, we also need that for the calculations. You know yourselves, I can do that with a long rear axle ratio. On the test bench, it almost runs in 12th gear, or with the new overdrive transmission, almost 200 kilometers per hour. That's crazy, those are new passenger car values. All right, I've matched the axle, I've matched the RPM. Then I'd say, let's start the measurement now. You know, the eddy current brakes can handle up to 6,000 Newton meters of torque. We won't quite reach that with this now. But you can already feel how it brakes at the bottom end. So let's start the measurement. You see, we're now revving it all the way up from the bottom to the top again. At 2100, we'll come off again. You can hear the howling in the background. That's actually the tires. People always think the engine is the loud part, but actually it's the tires that are extremely loud. So the shrill noise in the background is actually the rolling noise. All right, that already looks very good. Okay, then I'd say I'll do 1 or 2 more baseline measurements now, and then I'll explain everything to you on the monitor. We've now done the measurement, so let's quickly go through it together. Now we have again 800 to 2200 revolutions. Here is the torque axis, here is the horsepower axis. As you saw, I said earlier that we're trying to make the engine more flexible. You can see that we're starting with the torque much earlier and letting it rise linearly. At peak torque, we don't actually have that much more. But you can see we do start noticeably earlier and maintain it at the top end. For example, you can see here, if I compare at 1600 revolutions. The engine still has just under 2000 Newton meters, and up here almost 2400 Newton meters. That's what makes the whole thing so interesting. It pulls better at the top end when it shifts. Even the shift up RPM, if it's lower, you can let it drop down further as well. You can also upshift earlier. You can just see it. It's simply fun. I can actually measure it like this now. Perfect curve. I honestly couldn't have imagined it any better in this setup. We now even have 597 horsepower and 2806 Newton meters of torque. You can see it too. At peak torque, we don't actually have that much more. When people always ask about the engine's longevity, you can see it here. We don't actually have that much more peak torque. We just have it for longer, more flexibly. As I said, an absolutely awesome result. I've now done 3 measurements. All of them were perfect, and the power output was pretty much the same each time. You can see now it's almost 30 degrees in the workshop, and it's still early in the day. It's supposed to get really hot today. So, as I said, really perfect. I'm honestly just completely satisfied with the result. We've reached the end of our video again about the engine and transmission optimization of the Scania R500 with our Schaknat app. I always say, these trucks really make me happy. It's just fun to optimize them. Even though we've already done a lot of them, it just works incredibly well. And especially with our Schaknat app, with our adapter, you can see how fast it goes, how quickly the customer can actually do it themselves. They can optimize their truck. So if you're interested in this topic and our Schaknat app, feel free to check out our website at www.schaknat.de. You can also order it from our online shop, but you can also call us or send us an email and we can give you personal advice. Thank you for watching. I wish you all the best. Take care. See you next time. Bye.